Good afternoon to all of you, and good afternoon, Mr. Pouyanné, dear Patrick, because it's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you, and good afternoon to you too.
My first question on my first topic will be around, as we talk about energy, we are willing to talk also around what's going on the climate topic. It will be around COP26. You know, many of you have heard about the conference. Many of you have heard about some of the report, which were, I have to say, at best mixed, if I may say. But on the other side, many of us as business leaders were there, and there was more optimism sometimes from the business leaders around what we have achieved at this conference on what we can do moving forward. I would like to ask your views, Patrick, because this was an important conference, and it's good to have your views.
My views is that for me, the glass is more half full, half empty. I think the Paris Agreement, people tend to forget that it's a dynamic which has been installed in order to have a collective progress step after step. The problem between Paris and Glasgow, that in the meantime, in 2019, scientists declared that we need to get to net zero, that the next decade is urgency. But of course, the reality is that our society, because when we speak about climate, we speak about energy, we speak fundamentally about the way we run our societies, can not evolve dramatically by changing everything. So from this perspective, we came in Paris, the NDCs in Paris from the States were the global sum, where we are on a trajectory of 2.7, 2.8 degrees, despite the fact that the objective was well below 2 degrees. In Glasgow, I read reports that we are at 2.3, 2.4, so there is a progress. Maybe not big, but it's a progress. We've seen 130 countries signing a coalition against net deforestation from 2030. It's another big progress because natural carbon sinks are the most efficient ones. We've seen 75 countries have get to net zero by 2050, are committed, 75, representing 75% of emissions. So it's quite a big number. Of course, we've also seen, but that's back to a reality check for me, China, India, saying to the world, okay, you want us to phase out from coal, but sorry, we will phase down for the time being because our priority is a question of social and economic development, is to get our population out of poverty. We have billions of people. We cannot accept to be requested by your developed economies, the OECD countries, let's say, as because you developed with fossil fuels, that we should renounce to fossil fuels. And I think this is the next step for me. The reality is that climate change is a global challenge. I was quite shocked, to be honest, by the reactions in Western newspapers of COP26, accusing India and China not to have accepted this net zero and the phase out. I was shocked because, in fact, it's a form of colonialism somewhere, if you think about it. We should tell them, okay, you should not use coal, but then we will pay you not to use it. We'll pay your new system. Otherwise, why should they renounce to the coal, which is, of course, it's very for CO2 emitting, but it's less expensive energy today. So that's a big debate, and I think we'll be. But again, I consider there is a dynamic. Obviously, the transition will take time. Yeah. It's obvious. But you can observe that even in our countries, we went to Glasgow in form of paradox. On one side, our countries were calling for a coalition to go against subsidizing fossil fuel. And what is happening in the US and in Europe at the same time? In the US, Joe Biden is calling OPEC to produce more oil, is releasing oil in the market. And in Europe, the governments are giving checks to the citizens to face the price energy increase. So that's the reality of the topic. And in fact, they call that just transition, but it will take time. That's the reality. And again, but I think there is a dynamic clearly, and it's linked thanks to COVID somewhere, because the fragility of the planet has been even more obvious to many people, to many leaders like us. The call also from the young generation is really strong. And I think for me, this is really, it's becoming, climate is also for us of children, direct children, my children are telling me, what do you do as leaders today? And if you don't act, we, in 2050, will be there and our planet will have a problem. So I think it's where I think, so there is COVID plus the move of young people are pushing the leaders to take actions. But after that, obviously, everyone want to be clean, but at the same time, nobody wants to pay. And somebody will have to pay.
No, thanks. And I think I very much share the view that, the comments were sometimes more negative than reality, but we will see. And I think you introduced the fact that this energy transition is complex. The conference is all about transition. So if I get back into that topic of energy transition, which is important, would like to ask your views, because obviously the focus, and you remind us about the focus of COP26, but also discussion, there is always two sides on this famous energy transition. There is the side of the supply, which has been the big focus of many of those conferences, a big focus of your industry, because the world is still dominated by fossil fuel. We all know that in terms of the current energy production system. But there is also the demand side, which is all of us, either as business runners of our business, as citizens, where we have a certain way to consume energy, and this has also to transition. So what's your view on where we are on those both transition in terms of speed and alignment? Because both are important to get to the right outcome.
No, you make a very good analysis. In fact, one of the issues we face is that most of this conference focus on the supply. There is a supply on two sides. On one side, we need to build and to invest in our decarbonized energy system. So spending a lot of money in renewables, building this new energy system, renewable, batteries, hydrogen, all what we will need. Electricity fundamentally. And on the other side, people think that we could accelerate by declining the supply from oil and gas. The problem is that our society is with oil and gas, today is run by oil and gas, with fossil fuels and coal, to 80%. And so the risk is that if we lower the investments too quickly on one side, without acting on the demand, then price increase. This is exactly what happened. So what can we do on the demand? And it's back to where a company like Total Energies can act. Because we are seen as producer, and obviously we are asked to invest more, which we do. We invest 25% now, or $15 billion per year in renewables and electricity. So it's and with the leverage, it's around $7 billion of renewable projects per year. So it's quite a big contribution. But on the other side, we can also work on the demand. And where is the demand coming from? Demand is coming first for oil from transportation. So what a company can do like Total Energy, transportation, light vehicles. We are engaged in two directions. We invest in batteries for light vehicles with Stellantis and Daimler. So we put millions of euros. So it's a direct contribution to promote this demand of EVs and on charging points as well. So we begin to equip large cities, Paris, Singapore, London, Belgium, Brussels, etc., with charging points or motorways as well. Then transportation is trucks. What can we do on trucks? We have engaged in a strong collaboration with Daimler Trucks recently in order to work together about hydrogen trucks. How can we put in place networks, and hydrogen is liquefied hydrogen, compressed hydrogen, many technological issues. Plane is another big transport. So what can we do? We work with Safran now. Can we on what are the fuels which can be used to because we don't know, a company like Total Energies, we are asked to diminish our scope 3, which is a emission of our customers. But I don't know if a plane is really designed, is run. So working with Safran, which is the experts in engine, allow us to progress as well, to test and to develop with them some fuels, biofuels today, tomorrow e-fuels, with the ambition that we can inject more and more of this decarbonized fuel, what we call the sustainable aviation fuels. So it's another example. And then we have what we call on the demand, what are the hard to abate sectors, cement, steel. What can we do? We can work with them because we know that it will be very difficult for cementeries, for example, to exit from a fossil fuel, but because of the heat and the intensity of the heat they need. But we can bring them systems like storage for CO2, capturing and storage of CO2. So all that is working for customers. And so when I say scope 3, I don't feel I'm directly responsible. It's true. Scope 3 is my customer who decide if they use oil and gas. The society wants to make me responsible, but I need to work with them because I have not have the solutions. what we can do, it does not mean that we cannot act on it. I think we can act and help and work with them, because we can find solutions with our knowledge of what are the different energies, and of course, what are the costs of energies, because all that at the end is a question of economies, and everything is possible. We can make e-fuels, synthetic fuels. It just costs today 10 times more, but a jet fuel for plane. I'm not sure the travelers are ready to pay for that. So it's really a question, and that's a dimension on which I would say on demand, we need clearly governments to engage in policies. Today, if I'm speaking about EVs, I would not speak today as I'm speaking about investing in batteries, charging points, if the European Union did not put this regulation forcing somewhere car manufacturers, because of lower emission, to go from IC combustion engine to EVs. So the impulse came from these policies. Of course, the issue will be that today an EV vehicle costs 20,000 euro, while a combustion engine costs 10,000 euro. So the consumers we don't know if the consumers will follow. But the states, again, let's be clear, there is no way, it will not be possible for the consumers if the states do not put in place incentives in order to help these customers to pay the difference of 10,000 euro. There is no miracle. People suddenly don't find the money to. So that's a world system. So the technology, the companies have to invest and to bring the solutions, but to make the economic equation possible and to create the demand, there is a key role from policymakers.
Oh, thanks for that vision, because I think when we talk about the world in transition, certainly for the energy transition part, I think the way you describe it is way more holistic than what we sometimes talk about. It's not only the supply, it's all of us as citizens, as business runners, and as you say, it's government, the choice of society and the regulation we want to put. And all of this needs to be aligned to make progress, which is not always that easy, as you mentioned, and certainly not always the same across the world as well, as you also mentioned, because different countries may have different objectives and priorities, as you say, for India, China, and others. Sure. So maybe another topic, because if we move from COP, we move to transition, on energy transition, technology. Technology, there is many technology. We have that discussion many times with you, Patrick. I'm more on the digital technology side myself, but there is a lot of other technology in the energy sector that will help the world to do those transition. There is different line of thought. There is a techno-optimistic, there is a techno-pessimistic. There are people believe technology will solve everything. People saw that many technology are already there, and that's partly true. I think we are already doing a lot, and you are doing a lot as a company already, leveraging existing technology to get into that transition. There are also some energies that can help us probably to accelerate, which are sometimes mature but not affordable, sometimes not really mature or not affordable at all. But what's your view on how technology in the broader sense can play a role to accelerate, facilitate, or make it happen?
It's just fundamental. By the way, we speak about energy transition because in the last 20 years and even the last 10 years, we have been able to develop at scale solar technologies and batteries, lithium-ion technology. So it's the world transition. The key driver is clearly innovation and technology. We have already done a lot. It would be a mistake to believe that we have found everything. We need to continue to work on new technologies. Storage, for example, high-scale storage. But I think it's quite, by the way, impressive the way that take 10, 15 years, which is short time, in fact. In 2005, nobody was speaking about solar as being an obvious, cost-effective solution to produce power. It's not true. Then the price of oil began to go up, $100 plus, and then governments, because again, it's always a permanent quest for a cheap and affordable, reliable, and clean energy, decided that they need to invest in new technologies. And in fact, we managed to, because the scale, and it's not only technology, it's scale, which is the key important. What was the key driver for lowering the cost and establishing this wind and solar and battery technology is the scale of the demand. It's just fundamental. EV with Elon Musk, you make it at scale and suddenly you find economy of scale. So you have to believe in that, in technologies, and there is more to come. Floating offshore wind is one technology on which we invest today because we think that this is the next frontier to expand the capacity to take benefit from wind offshore. There is more wind offshore, and floating, you can go further from the cost. So other issues, it's longer. It's not so but we can manage these technologies. This was one example. I was speaking about energy storage. Obviously, it's fundamental because the more you develop renewable energies which are intermittent, finding the way to store the electricity which is produced during the day or when there is wind, and to relinquish it during the night when people are consuming the energy, the electricity, you can optimize a lot the cost of all that, the global system. You spoke about digital. Digital is not far from energy. And it's, it's not because you don't be shy, Mr. Rolani. We need digital. By the way, we have established in Paris, with your help, a big digital factory. We have almost 250 data scientists and other guys there who speak a strange language to me, but it seems that I can tell you, when you go there, I've been there, they are working hard on topics which are directly related to new energies, in fact. The way with data, for example, I met my drillers, we're drilling. But for the first time in the company, I met drillers. They are looking to all the data of all the drilling rigs in order to minimize the use of energy on drilling rigs. I never seen that in 25 years in the oil and gas. No, never seen. And so suddenly, because we told them it's just an absolute priority, lower your emissions. And they use data and they develop a model. And I was surprised, but they show me quite impressive, 40% diminution of. So you can do with data a lot of things. In mobility, we have a platform. We develop a platform for mobility in order to create an ecosystem for electric mobility. And by the way, we'll go further. We will establish in Station F in Paris an ecosystem for startups around the topics electricity and digital, because fundamentally, and electricity is an interesting energy. It's made of electrons, and so somewhere digital and is native to it. So you can do a lot of things with digital. And I think it's probably for me one of the next way to in particular in all what we speak about energy efficiency. Because the best emissions is the one you avoid. If you don't spend the energy in all our programs, the governments obviously should put a lot of emphasis not only for buildings, but in many areas. If we want to really save the global challenge, we should impacting the behavior of the customer by helping them to lower. And from this perspective, people say digital servers consume a lot and they make emissions, but fundamentally they are part of the solution to find solutions. So technology is everywhere. And for me, if I'm optimistic, it's because I think in this energy system where we have thousands of brilliant engineers, technicians, we put together a lot of billions of dollars, and we must be optimistic in the same way that mankind has discovered the vaccine against COVID in 9 months. So we have the capacity to be super innovative if we are positive about it and finding solutions.
No, and we're going to need probably those innovations as we probably need to accelerate. There is a couple of message conference also around those disruptive technology. One you do not mention, carbon capture. So it's not really a disruptive technology. You may say it's something that is out there, but many people say it's going to be a must if we want to. What's your views on this one?
Yeah, but what is a must if we want to be net zero? It's not to be zero. Because at the end of the day, in all the scenario you have in 2050, including the famous net zero emission of the IEA, as we are at the OECD today, I can speak about it, even I don't like the scenario, but because I don't think it's really realistic at the beginning, at least the slope. But you still have oil. You have 25 million of oil per day. You have gas. So we need to find ways to develop carbon sinks. It's people raise a debate, compensation, blah, blah, but at the end, we need that. So it's not only about, it can be natural, by carbon sinks, stopping deforestation or reforestation or taking care of mangroves. There are ways to create carbon sinks. It's, by the way, economically very efficient for $10 per ton, so compared to other options. But there are technological ones, one of them being capturing the carbon, either using the CO2 as a feedstock, for example, e-fuels, for synthetic fuels. Synthetic fuel is a combination of hydrogen and CO2, and you make a fuel. That's possible. at least and costs 10 times more, but it's feasible. It's or storage of it. So storage is not a big technology. What is complex is the capture, because we know to capture CO2 when it's with a good concentration in the air. If it is in the atmosphere, you have a little CO2. It's more complex because you need energy to capture. But there is obviously a form of Graal for me, which is the famous direct air capture. If we were able to really recapture some of the CO2 we emitted, it's another way not to change the full system. Of course, today it seems it's not on the table, but it is one of the technology on which we need to work, because it could solve again to recapture part of the past emissions. So we have to be imaginative. All that has a cost. There is one point but I want to mention. It would be much easier among the policies from the governments if we put a price on the carbon. Because obviously something which is just fundamental, and when we speak about CCS, there is this idea that it does not work. It's not true. At $100 per ton, and in Europe we are at 70 euros, so it's 70 euro, it's not far. I can tell you, you can develop carbon capture and stockage at $100 per ton. It works, it's economic. So there is one call there. If we want to develop all these net zero technologies, we need to have a price on the carbon. And for me, I know it's complex. Maybe it's not the same price everywhere on the planet in Europe, but the fact that Europe has a price because at the end, my company, we make investments in we are not a philanthropy, it has to be. So we invest because of this price. Today, when we make projects in the Netherlands or in Norway of carbon capture and storage, I can make the math. I can demonstrate with $100 per ton, but there is a profitability. And so I'm doing the investments because I believe that, yes, our steel manufacturers, cementeries, where we need to store some CO2 somewhere. And so the price is a clear signal, and then our companies will make the investments and we will develop the technologies. So that's also why it's important to have from the government the right signals.
Thanks a lot. I think we will have to close, unfortunately, because we are at the end. But I think thanks.
No, it's perfect. 1 second. We are.
I think it's important to be on time.
A remarkable interviewer.
Oh, no, thanks, Patrick, for your comment, because I think it was important to bring, from the energy perspective, the view of this specific transition on energy, which is certainly part of your debate for the conference. So back to you.